Hi, so welcome to Art Meets Science, illuminating human interaction to marine ecosystems. So in the dynamic space where art interacts with science, we will explore how human actions resonate through marine ecosystems and explain why these interactions become crucial as the Earth faces unprecedented changes due to climate change, pollution, or exploitation. In the world of misinformation, disinformation, propaganda, science communication is crucial in advancing our understanding of the world and ensuring that scientific discoveries benefit everyone, from researchers to policymakers to everyday citizens. Communicating science is not straightforward, as our work is often highly specialized, using technical language and complex concepts. However, effective communication allows us to bridge the gap between our research and the broader public. So today, you'll meet some inspiring and dedicated people who give me hope that we can turn the wheel to save the fragile balance of the ocean's ecosystems through their dedication to knowledge and understanding. We try to think outside the box and using images, new concepts from gaming, and sounds to bridge the gap between science and understanding. In the context of When Art Meets Science, you'll meet a Belgian explorer and a photographer and 4 brilliant researchers and communicators from SINTEF Ocean. Clauwers is a Belgian photographer, explorer, public speaker, and author, and his talk using image and visual storytelling to bridge science, policy, and industry takes us from the remote areas of the oceans, from the polar regions, documenting scientific research and exploring the fragile, conflicted relationship between humans and nature. He demonstrates how images evoke empathy and understanding across diverse audience and bridge the gap between scientific research and public understanding. Sahar Stevenson-Jones will take us to a captivating journey into the ocean. Her talk, Dive into the Ocean with Me, promises to explore the intricate connections between human interactions and marine life in the Arctic. Farkas and Muriel Dunn dwell into using sound to understand ocean inhabitants in their Listening to the Ocean talk. By capturing underwater acoustics, we gain insight into changing ocean conditions and their impact on marine life. Finally, Ute Bronner explores the concept of digital twins of the ocean through interactive gaming environments. These virtual models enhance our understanding of ocean dynamics and ecosystems. So I wish you a lovely evening, and I'm pretty sure that you will leave the room inspired, energized, and wiser. So thank you for coming.
Hi everyone, thank you very much for being here. My name is Clauwers. I'm a Belgian photographer, you can say, with a background in political science and also global management. About 10 years ago, I started with what I would call now the mission. A photographer with a mission. The mission for me is to use images and photography as a tool, an instrument to communicate. I believe that image as an instrument is a language without boundaries, without words that you need to learn, without sentences, without a syntax. It speaks directly to the heart. It can communicate in a very clear way information that language cannot. So I use these images to bridge the world of scientists and scientific institutions, the diplomacy world, governments, and so on, and also industry and education. I give lectures to many different audiences, and I show what is at stake and the vulnerability of our planet, the conflict between man and nature, through publications, photo exhibitions, and so on. So documenting the Anthropocene is, I think, the best title for this presentation. So officially we're in what is called the Holocene. About 11,700 years ago, it started with the last ice age. But human impact is so severe on climate and biodiversity decline that some scientists, and actually the majority of scientists, are talking about the 6th mass extinction. Human impact on nature is present, and I see it as my role and my mission to visualize this, to show the show the impact of climate change and biodiversity decline, but also show the vulnerability of specific ecosystems. So awareness is really what this is about, to raise awareness through images, because it is a matter of time. So I like to start with this image, because I'm a documentary photographer. I'm not a nature photographer, which means that I go beyond showing the beauty of nature. Documentary photography means that I really visualize what my eye and my camera caught without manipulating the image. This is this is a strange background. No. This is a whiteout. So this is taken in Svalbard. Normally it's completely white, the image. But so this is in winter. These are Svalbard reindeer. And a true whiteout is this phenomenon where everything becomes white. You don't see distance anymore, no horizon, and so on. So my fascination is really in between man and nature, this conflict. You see a group of people there. So this is a pure white image normally, with a group of people. So I got my inspiration about 10 years ago when I learned from Sami and Inuit how they see themselves into nature as a part of nature. The understanding is a concept that brings responsibilities, and it's a concept that we tend to forget or have been forgotten in our modern civilization and society. So this is a very interesting fascination, and so with this image I also show and learned how Inuit, for example, can read elements in nature, finding their way back, and so on. So let's go and stay in the Arctic for now. So these are the old barracks that are now used by UNIS at the University of Tromsø in Longyearbyen in Svalbard. So a lot of climate change is very visual. Actually, Svalbard, as the archipelago, is warming up 4 to 6 times faster than anywhere else in the world. So all science that is related to climate change is very well, obvious and very necessary. So I'm showing you some photos that I took about 10 years ago. Here you see Venus with the International Space Station coming by, and you see in the lower right corner, you see the last mine barrack, and actually there is an entrance of the old mine, which is now abandoned. What I also like about polar regions is the lack of color. You see in the lower right is a traffic sign with red. Red is a color that is not really obvious. So what else do we see in this photo? Well, we see the old towering system to bring the coals from the mines to the port. These wooden towers are like industrial heritage, still standing there. And the whole landscape is really dominated by it. Here on the foreground of this photo, you see glacial ice, where they did ice coring. Because through ice coring, glacier ice, you can really see in the bubbles in the ice were formed when the atmosphere, the bubbles in the ice are little samples of the atmosphere whenever the ice became ice. So if we drill deeper, and in Antarctica we're now drilling up to 3.5 kilometers depth, we find actually a lot of information of the atmosphere of thousands and thousands of years ago. This gives us really a lot of insight of the atmosphere, even elements, not only composition, but also pressure and so on. So behold Svalbard in April, and behold Svalbard in June. No more ice, no more snow. This is only 1,200 kilometers from the geographical North Pole. On a photo like this is one of those photos that I always bring to the climate change conferences. You see in the middle of the photo, you see the horizon with a little red house here. This is one of those huts used by scientists to conduct scientific research in more remote areas. And then everything on the background is one and the same mountain. You have these clouds here in front, and then you see this S-curve, these curve shapes in that mountain. This is what you can call an infographic. It shows what is not there anymore. It used to be a glacier. Ice was eroding in the mountain, but the ice has molten, it's gone. Same on the foreground. This is a tundra showing. The tundra with all its beautiful layers, but then you see these elements like wood and a tube and plastic, anthropogenic impacts. These are artifacts created by humans. If we go more north, this is taken less than 1,000 kilometers north, the distance of the geographical North Pole. You see that there is no ice anymore at all. Another consequence is the wedges. The permafrost is thawing, so the ground cracks open. What you see here in the lower right, this is called a wedge. So you have a lot of methane that is being released there, and actually it's much more severe. On global warming, the impact is much more severe than CO2. To give you an idea of how big this is, you see a scientist here. He's a bit distant, but these are huge wedges. So you see them all over the Arctic. Here, this is a photo how I show what is going on as well. You see sea ice that is melting. The photo speaks in many layers. You see a seal in its natural habitat on a piece of ice, but there's not a lot of sea ice left. In the reflection of the water, which should be sea ice, you see the glacier tongue that is retreating, that is melting faster and faster. Now, a lot of animals like the polar bear are depending on sea ice, not only to hunt, but also for their cubs and to move around and so on. It's a marine mammal. It can swim really well, but for its survival, it really depends on the sea ice. Same for the South Pole, I will get there. So a huge part of my work has to do with biodiversity. Out of 8 million species, both fauna and flora, 1 million is being threatened now due to only one species out of all of them, which is human beings. So this is where it really all started for me, Svalbard Global Seed Vault, with a lot of nicknames, the Doomsday Vault, the genetic library of the planet, the life insurance policy for the world's food supply. That's perhaps the best title. So in 2008, the Norwegian government decided to build a facility inside a mountain on Svalbard in the high Arctic to safeguard all food crop biodiversity worldwide. Worldwide, there are around 1,700 gene banks. And the idea is really to bring in all copies from all those seed banks, so copies of copies, in order to really have to the fullest extent possible, compilation and spares actually of crop seeds worldwide. So the capacity of this facility is 4.5 million seeds. Here you see how the door is being opened. This is an inaccessible place. It's really hard to get there. For some reason, I was being granted access in 2014, and I'm really very happy of that because this is really where it all started. I saw this huge conflict between man and nature, and I decided to make this a life's mission to document it. So it looks like this, 130 meters above sea level, and then 130 meters tunnel inside that mountain with 3 rooms. 4.5 million seats is a capacity. The room is about the size of this room, and there are 3 rooms of those. Inside. And the irony is, right now we have around 1.2 million varieties. Now this is a very ironical photo because I took it in 2014, but about 2 years later, the permafrost around this tunnel was thawing so fast that there was actually a leak already. So it was built to resist for hundreds of years, centuries to come, for your great-grandchildren, and already water came inside. So now they really reinforced everything. Luckily, no seeds were harmed, so that's the good news. Behold the entrance door to the most important room, you can say, of our planet. And this is how it looks behind it. Now, without the cooling system, which you see in the upper left and right corner, it would only be minus 10 degrees. So according to international regulation, and to preserve seed crops, minus 18 would be the perfect temperature. So already they have to cool it down even more with a completely autonomous system. But still, the high Arctic, deep in the permafrost mountain. So here on the left, you see the entire food crop collection of Canada. And on the right, you see the International Rice Research Institute boxes, holding more than 100,000 different species of rice, only rice. So a lot of symbolism, of course. On the left, you see when it opened in 2008, these are 3 samples, crop seed samples of Germany. Then in the middle, you see how every seed sample is or variety is being brought in right now, with a lot of information in aluminum, with insulation and so on. And on the right, this is a very important photo because this whole project is really for humanity. So it surpasses conflict. So no geopolitical tension inside the seed vault. You see boxes of North Korea and the People's Republic of Korea. So 3 rooms. This is the 3rd room. When I was there in 2014, the 2nd room was already being prepared, and now I know there are already boxes, so 1 room is entirely full, 1.2 million. But the 3rd, we never know if, well, we cannot know now if this room will ever be filled up, because actually we don't know how many seeds there are, how many species there are. In the deep sea, we still discover minimum 1 species every day. So a similar project in a mine, again, in Svalbard, mine number 3, an abandoned coal mine, where actually they started the predecessor of the Svalbard Global Seed Vault. But about 7 years ago actually, they came up with the idea to create something similar, but for humanity, for data, for knowledge, and also for cultural heritage, called the Arctic World Archive. So the idea is simple. It's an old decommissioned mine, so stable temperature, stable humidity, and so on. And they would bring in these cassettes, like it's a digital technology to print it analog on like an old pellicule film. So you don't have the hazards of technology and cybersecurity and so on. It's printed in an analog way, so it can hold at least 2,000 years according to the ISO standards. As you can see on this photo, I did the first Belgian deposit with 2 of my projects. One of them is the Pacific project, where I am spending 8 years already to document the rising sea levels and the impact on Pacific island states that are doomed to disappear. And the other one is a research vessel, Belgica, the research vessel of my country, Belgium, for which I'm assigned by Belgian science policy to do the outreach and dissemination. The idea about this, the last one, is really to show in 200-300 years, whenever a human person, or who knows who, will take out this cassette and have a look and see how in 2022, when I took those photos, we conducted marine sciences and the methods and the instruments and so on. So it tells something about 2022 and marine scientific research.
May I ask you a question? The
Sure.
ALPA is a private initiative, isn't it? Run by a private company?
Not really. The technologies. There is now a foundation, so it's a good question. Yeah, but the technology to print it, that's a private company. Yeah. So let's go to the other pole, Antarctica, South Pole. So what you see here, I just returned in January from a 1-month expedition with following 17 scientists conducting different research. So in total, there were 4 research projects. One of them was focusing on emperor and Adelie penguins. So we were tagging the penguins, and we were also checking them for bird flu. And unfortunately, we did find bird flu actually in the Amundsen Sea, named after Roald Amundsen. And Amundsen Sea is really one of the most remote places, so that is not good news at all. A part of my work is showing not only impact and conflict, but also the beauty of nature and the beauty that is at stake, actually. So photos like these, penguins, and just really, well, pure places, they still exist. This is the photo. It's my first emperor sighting. So for me personally, it's a connotation that evokes a lot of emotion. But that's also what image does. And that's why I think a photo like this is very strong. It shows an image of an emperor penguin standing alone in its natural habitat, completely alone. So it shows beauty, but it shows something sad as well. And that's exactly what image can do and what I find very powerful about image. Now with decline of sea ice, species like this, the emperor penguin, which is compared to, well, simultaneously with the polar bear, you can say that these creatures are really symbolizing also the vulnerability of the polar regions. Because when sea ice goes in decline, these animals cannot molt anymore, they can not hatch and actually survive. They cannot survive anymore. So the part of the research that we did in Antarctica was also see how these penguins, emperor penguins colonies are actually relocating because of decline of sea ice. So sea ice decline is problematic also for krill and phytoplankton growing underneath, but it doesn't contribute to sea level rise. Well, glacial ice does. This is a piece, this is an iceberg, so it calved off well, the Antarctic ice sheet, and you see already the next crack is already present. You see there is a big chunk missing. There's a difference in color. Now this is the southernmost point in the world, so anywhere it can go, well, it's always more northern and warmer and saltier water, so it's accelerating easily. A photo like this shows also the problematic effects of global warming on sea ice decline. Here you see really another infographic. This is an iceberg that turned, that rotated 90 degrees because of the gravity point that moved. And then you see how surface water warms up and cuts deep in the ice, deeper and deeper. Every day it warms up, every night it cools down, and you see it. I visualized what is happening. So also this is interesting information for scientists. Human exploration is always part of our planet. So this is a hut of Robert Falcon Scott, where they were sitting on the table, 1908, on their way to the South Pole. The dry valleys, these are different expeditions that I did. And McMurdo Station, it's really interesting to see. Officially nobody lives in Antarctica, but a lot of people are working there. So McMurdo is the biggest, well, scientific city, you can say, about 1,000 inhabitants in summer, which would be November to February, early February, and about 200 or less in the winter. So I can show you a penguin, or I can show you a part, like a fragment, a detail of a penguin. So your brain sees a penguin here, but what you're seeing is actually the beauty of this animal. You see like a Picasso, you see the shapes and the shades in the color, and how it transits from whitish to really dark orange. So that's also powerful, what is powerful about the tool called photography. So this is the boys band. A lot of king penguins here. This is actually a fragment of the biggest colony in the world, and to show you how big it really is, I show you this one, the red square. So that's really, really, really a big colony. So these are photos to show you the beauty, of course. These are kelp attached to these rocks, kelp that grows really 8-9 meters long. In 2019, I made a book called Waves with some poetry in it to really, show in a different way, in an abstract and artistic way, to show appreciation for the ocean and also raise awareness on its importance. This photo is actually the bluest blue that the ocean can be, because I took it at noon, exactly at the equator. This was a scientific expedition with marine scientists, 5 weeks long, observations, every day again on the deck. So I took some really remarkable photos like flying squid and flying fish, photos that I shared also with the scientific database, because photos like this, a flying fish goes away from the bow of your vessel, and if you can capture it, which is quite difficult, you mostly have its tail and the back, but here I have it from the side. Here I'm showing you how gravity pulls and takes over, and the creature starts to fall down but doesn't want to be eaten, so it's really resisting. This is a wandering albatross with the bird with the longest wingspan in the world. I'm also fascinated by island communities, because islands are small worlds by itself with its own evolution and its own natural habitat and evolution of the habitat. So this is Tristan da Cunha. Tristan da Cunha, officially the most remote inhabited place of the world. There is only one village called Edinburgh of the Seven Seas, and these people, they really live with the rhythm of the day. They have a different understanding towards nature, because nature, they're really more close to nature, they're really part of it. In 2019, I went with the French research vessel Marion Dufresne to what is called the Terre Australie-Antarctique Française, so the French southern and Antarctic lands. So this is what they call a rotation. 4 times a year they do this about 4,000 kilometer route by boat. It's actually a research vessel but also a supply ship for the about 100 scientists in total in these territories that are stationed there. This is an orca type D, a very rare orca, very few sightings, so I'm very happy with this photo. And for biosecurity reasons, ships in those areas, they go on anchor. They never touch land, just to be sure that rats and mice and so on cannot go ashore. So everything from instruments to scientists, calibration instruments and so on goes on shore by helicopter. These are really the purest and most pristine places that I've ever seen. This is the base, Alfred Fauré. This is Île de l'Est, so in English, East Island, one of these islands from the Crozet archipelago, where the French government leaves everything untouched. They didn't put foot on land since 1980. And so they want to see from observations outside from their ships how everything is evaluating. This is really pure land. So for the last 8 years, I'm documenting the Pacific region. As I mentioned before, this is one of the projects that I've put in the Arctic World Archive as well. And so actually this map is not up to date because federal states of Micronesia and Marshall Islands, I also documented them in 2023. So for 8 years, mainly by sailing vessel, to really reach those remote spots, I'm trying to really be a voice for Pacific Islanders. I'm also an EU Climate Pact ambassador, and I try to raise a voice for them. These people are often forgotten, but they contributed less than 0.1% to climate change, and they take 90% of the impact with their islands. This photo I took in Melanesia to show, well, it's a fisherman, but in Melanesia they have a different concept of ownership. They don't own land. You can't buy land. Well, it's a bit double. This is how it should be, and in the old ways, because it's being misused, unfortunately. But the concept and understanding of ownership is completely different. They would give it to their from father to son and so on, and they would use the land instead of own it. Marshall Islands, one of the 4 atoll states, and a very significant one to go and document, because these people, they will probably not see their land anymore by by the end of the century. So this is Ebai. Ebai is the most inhabited Pacific island. Aegid, that's another one. Oh, this is a film, but I will skip it. Okay. This is Kiribati. So this is now we're going to Polynesia, from Micronesia to Polynesia. Now the ocean once was this bridge to the next island, the way out, the way to see the world, and now it's really becoming a threat more and more. So in their subconscious as well, from one to another generation, so much changed already, and these people have little means to protect themselves. So what they can use is, well, the bedrock. They're exploding the coral reefs with explosives to use the stones, but also coral reefs are dying. So you see these white stones. These were corals. And they're building seawalls to protect them, to protect themselves. So this is Nauru. That's a complete different story. Nauru is a story of ecocide, where they took their natural resources to such an extent that everything is exhausted and polluted. So it's a very sad story. Tuvalu. Tuvalu is the narrowest country and shows a lot of coastal erosion, impact of coastal erosion, the sea that really takes away, and salty water that infiltrates the soil so that they cannot really crop seeds anymore. A way to cope with coastal erosion is mangrove plantations, like you see here. And of course, when your soil is getting salty and you can't grow anything anymore, you have to import everything, which leaves a big footstep and really makes you think about your footstep. So this is taken in Tuvalu, where they chose the end of the very narrow atoll to put all their waste at. And actually for scientific research, it's really, a very interesting place because you can trace all the roots of the plastic and so on. So this is Tuvalu again. This is a fragment from a movie I took in 2015, the Paris Agreement, 1.5 degree. It really is the difference between above and beneath the water for those people. So Palau is actually a very positive story where the government of Palau saw that they have to protect what is in the sea by marine protected areas, sustainable economy, blue economy and so on, attracting ecotourism, abandoning sun cream. So sun cream really destroys coral reefs, and now they took out the elements that did. And they came up with the Palau Pledge. So in order to enter this country, you have to sign in your passport, this is my visa. So you have to sign that the only footprints that you shall leave are those that will wash away. This is a project that I did in Philippines. These are fishermen islands. So I work a lot locally as well. And so marine sciences and also polar sciences is also a major part of my work. So this is the Belgica, the Belgian research vessel. It's a multi-applicable, multi-scientific research vessel where they can work with about 22 scientists on different teams, different sciences simultaneously. It's high-tech. It's really very stable as well with satellite technology. And it has the rosette with the CTD for oceanographers that can go to 5,000 meter depth. So here you see all the Niskin bottles, it's called, all these sampling bottles around with this main instrument underneath. I took this photo from below, so like a frog's, how do you say that, upside up? Like, yeah. So then with a winch it goes out and they release it in the water, take samples on different depths, and then the scientific teams start to analyze those water samples. So you see that in the lower right corner, scientific teams are still taking samples, and then simultaneously there is a plankton net coming up. And we took some samples about 300 meter depth. This is how zooplankton looks like, so some very small animals with a bit of plant-based animals, some phytoplankton as well. And then you see all those dots, all those colored dots, blue, orange, yellow. It's really like confetti. All that is microplastics, sadly enough. We're deploying some Argo floats. And Argo is a project of the United Nations to monitor our oceans. It's also part of the Global Ocean Observation System. So awareness is what it is about. And what I try to do is really raising awareness through publications. Last year, I actually spoke in the Belgian Senate and had an 8-month exhibition in the Federal Parliament of Belgium. 3 days ago in the Berlaymont building, the building of the European Commission in Brussels, I had an exhibition during the European Open Days. That's what you see here. This is in the Federal Parliament with the Minister of Climate and the chairman of the Chamber of Representatives opening my exhibition. Of course, I do have my heroes like Sylvia Earle. So a lot of climate change conferences, I met her again and again. I'm also a fellow of the Explorers Club, and she's a member. She will probably speak at Ocean Week early June. I do a lot with the Belgian embassies. This is the Belgian embassy in Denmark, Kongens Nytorv Square. These are the photos that you can see now in Trondheim. And so after this talk, I will show you the exact location. So they were, provided by the European Environment Agency last year. These are embassies, and that was Bern. This one is Argentina, so these are conferences. This is with the Crown Prince Haakon, also last year, Equo 5 conference. Different audiences, all ages. This is University of Hong Kong, University of Antwerp, and so on. So I'd like to thank you and have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Okay, my name's Sahar. I work at SINTEF Ocean, specifically with the CLIMAREST project. And I would like to begin by setting you a challenge. Today, when you leave this talk, or the next time you're near a large body of water, marine or otherwise, just stop for a few moments and look. Absorb the scene. Notice the changes in the colour and the texture. Notice the sounds, the smells. Are the waves glossy? Is the water clear? Are the hills in the distance surrounded by a blanket of mist, or are they capped by snow? Then take a moment to consider all the things you cannot see. The plankton bobbing around in the water, the shoals of fish, the algae, the bright orange sea cucumbers that live hundreds of meters down, with the Greenland sharks pockmarked with age. The sensors dangling in the water from bright yellow buoys, gigantic propellers pushing ships along, keels of sailboats cutting through the water like a hot knife through butter. There is a lot going on down there, and there is a lot that we don't know about. Note your perception in whatever way you will. A memory, a photograph, a diary entry, a poem, a painting. And remember that the next person sees what you see, but experiences it differently. Along the coast of the Atlantic and all across the world, millions of people share a connection with the ocean. They have a dependency on the ocean. Whether for food, scientific exploration, exploitation of resource, transport or recreation, the ocean provides for coastal communities in places as far-reaching as Longyearbyen in Svalbard and Adelaide Island in Antarctica. Coastal communities and the complex networks of economies that are created around them are under threat from rapidly changing climates, increasingly damaging coastal storms, flooding, and rising sea temperatures. Pollution, agricultural runoff, and overfishing are also significant challenges which face our global hydrosphere. That threat comes from ourselves. We have exploited the resources of the ocean through overfishing and dredging of the sea bottoms. We have drilled into the sea to suck out gas and oil for our ever-industrializing society. We plan to dig deeper into the seabed in the search for the rare earth metals that will propel us away from our dependency on fossil fuels. We have pumped untreated sewage directly into rivers and seas all over the globe. We have not sufficiently understood the impact of the breakdown of our plastic lives into tiny particles that are ingested by marine organisms. we have allowed for fertilizers from farming and chemicals used in industrial processes to leach into watercourses. We cannot begin to repair the ocean if we don't stop damaging it. And we can't repair the ocean if we don't use its resources sustainably and start doing it soon. Some say it's already too late. But at least those pressures can be reduced, and we can work together to mitigate the impact of human actions. For this to be effective, we need to put people at the heart of the solution. In social science, these communities are called stakeholders, and considering it plays such a pivotal role in the management of the entire Earth's ecosystem and climate systems, we are all stakeholders in the ocean. Typically, people of all ages feel like they have got a rotten deal out of a situation when they do not feel heard or understood. At the center of that is a lack of empathy. This can lead to all sorts of dramas, arguments, fallings out, temper tantrums. But empathy requires you to be able to understand another point of view. It requires you to have been in a situation to understand what that other person is saying or feeling. I was recently on a train to Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris. There was a little boy, aged 15 months, held tightly by his father. The little boy was red-faced and blotchy, salty tears streaming down his face. He was shrieking, he was restless. He did not feel heard. He was too small to be able to tell us what was wrong, and all he could do was cry and shriek. And in a situation familiar to many parents, I'm sure, nothing would settle him. Toys, peekaboo, his mom, water, food, even ice cream. That boy was inconsolable. He was being watched avidly by most of the train carriage and a little girl about the same age. She was being held by her mum, and what she did next did more than restore faith in humanity. Obviously, she couldn't talk to the boy either, but she gently reached out her hand and to caress his cheek. A little action to show that it was okay. The boy stopped crying immediately, and everybody on the train carriage breathed a sigh of relief. Until the little girl and her mother and father and me jumped off the train carriage at Charles de Gaulle Airport, followed by an almighty shriek of heartbreak and closing train doors. I am not an expert in child psychology, but for those few moments, that action was enough communication between those two little humans for that boy to feel heard. It was a magical communication of empathy. My point is that empathy is most challenging when there is a barrier to understanding. For example, due to language, culture, beliefs, motivations, or, more relevant than shrieking children on trains, access to the very thing that needs to be understood. Because it's not possible to take every single person by the hand and dive down with them into the deep blue sea. Cost, accessibility, and environmental impact are just some barriers that prevent stakeholders from experiencing what is going on underneath the ocean. In the CLIMAREST project, we have begun exploring new ways to communicate the need for our work. In March, CLIMAREST was represented at the Mission Ocean exhibition at Brussels Ocean Week, organised by the European Commission. Amongst other ocean literacy resources developed by partners from across the project, we took with us a set of VR goggles and this epoxy resin. The virtual reality experience was stitched together from a selection of videos taken using a 360 camera, and a voiceover was added to provide more insight. It shows Svalbard in its best light: summer sunshine, snow-capped mountains, turquoise blue water. It was very popular because it was different, and despite receiving 150,000 tourists every year, not many people have actually been to Svalbard. But the most impactful part was when we handed exhibition attendees the epoxy. This stuff set in here Sanitary towels, cigarette butts, wet wipes, confetti, bits of scrunched up hair is collected from the bottom of the fjord that they had just spent 90 seconds ogling at. That elicited a repeat expression of, "We need to do something about that." This was a low-cost side project, hastily put together to meet a challenge set by exhibition organisers, no paper resources. With time, sufficient funding and creativity, this can be developed into an experience that interactively simulates otherwise inaccessible environments. We can use virtual reality to transport our stakeholders to the underwater realms that the CLIMAREST project is attempting to show can be restored, allowing all with an interest to truly explore kelp forests in Madeira, oyster reefs in Brittany, and the rich biodiversity which thrives beneath the mussel beteas in Galicia. We can also use these experiences to provide insights into the impacts of human activities on the ocean, enabling better decision-making, capitalising on learning opportunities for future generations. They are useful communication tools that can promote ocean stewardship and bring sometimes wildly conflicting opinions to sing from the same hymn sheet. They can foster empathy, inspire action, and drive forward positive change. Furthermore, even simple immersive experiences like this one have the power to democratise ocean exploration, allowing for truly inclusive connections with the ocean. CLIMAREST are just at the beginning of their immersive journey, but we hope that by the end of the project we will have a series of experiences from across our demonstration sites which can be incorporated into something called the Marine Restoration Toolbox, an online resource to encourage best practice for marine restoration projects in the future and used as an ocean literacy resource for many years to come. The ocean has, for millennia, been a muse for all forms of art: poetry, mythology, paintings, music, and maps, illustrated with fantastical beasts that were rumoured to live in the depths of remote seas. Whilst we can be almost certain that these stories and songs and illuminated scrolls have been exaggerated by the passing of time, there must be an iota of truth hidden beneath their tellings of sea monsters and captivating mermaids. Valid means to communicate perceived experiences, also known as art. What we can be certain of is that the videos that we produce in the project cannot be exaggerated by the passing of time. They will forever be a depiction of what is happening now, right now, under the surface of the sea in Adventfjorden, in Galway, in Brittany, Galicia, and Madeira. And I hope that in 5, 10, 15 years' time, someone will be looking out on the sea in one of these places, remembering that it was different some time ago. Perhaps, too, they can be thankful that they are richer now because they can sustainably harvest local, native species which are of economic interest, such as the European flat oyster or the European blue lobster. That they are now more confident in their local government because the local farmers and local industry have worked together to collaboratively to reduce the release of wastewater into watercourses. Thankful that their children are now able to swim in areas that used to be no swim zones. Perhaps they can use these videos to make comparisons and validate the actions that people, like us, have spent millions of euros to initiate. Perhaps they will have an understanding that the flourishing algal forests and seagrass meadows lining the coastline are home to rich biodiversity and are important to conserve because they are stitching the atmosphere back together, one carbon dioxide molecule at a time. Most of all, I hope that someone will watch that video in 5, 10, 15 years' time and know that this is no longer to be found at the bottom of Adventfjorden. With that, I hope that they are enabled to continue our work at scale and across the world, implementing low-cost solutions within best practice guidelines to restore marine habitats and help those most affected by climate change protect themselves. We cannot leave the responsibility of painting or taking that picture to our children. They must be the benefactors of our realization to mitigate the action of our parents' generation, and be therefore inspired to continue putting the ocean back at the center of the frame. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Julia Farkas. I'm a research scientist at SINTEF Ocean, and I study effects of anthropogenic activities in the ocean.
And hello, I'm Muriel Dunn. I'm a research scientist at SINTEF Ocean, and I work with underwater sound. Today, we will present on how we use sound as scientists to expand our senses underwater. So we use sound underwater because it travels much, much faster and stays much louder for farther distances than it does in air. So it's a very powerful tool. If I were to sing to you, "We all live in the yellow submarine," then you can hear me till about the back of the room, even without the mic, so about 10 to 15 meters. But if a killer whale were to sing its own rendition of "We all live in the yellow submarine," you could hear it all the way across the fjord to Vanvikan, no problem. Its peers could, the killer whale's peers. And my rendition would take 30 seconds to cross the fjord. So it'd take a whole half a minute to travel those 11 kilometers. Whereas for the killer whale, it's a much faster experience because the sound travels much faster across the fjord. So now my yellow submarine made it to the other side. And now if the killer whale starts to sing, it crosses the fjord very rapidly. There it goes. So that's why sound is a very powerful tool for the inhabitants of the ocean and for us scientists using it, because it travels fast and it travels far.
But how far?
Very far.
So far? That scientist trying to be funny. But actually so far stands for sound fixing and ranging. The so-called SOFAR channel is a layer in the open ocean between 600 or 800 meters to 1,000 meters depth. In this layer, sound travels, and it is reflected across boundaries between that are formed by temperature, salinity, and pressure. And the sound travels within these boundaries very far, because it does almost not lose power. Especially low frequencies can travel for many kilometers, many hundreds of kilometers, even up to thousands of kilometers. So a sound made, for example, on our side of the Atlantic can travel all across the Atlantic and can still be heard in America. So this is very powerful for us humans to communicate over long distances, but also for whales, for example. And there is a difference between, oh, that is almost not visible. It's supposed to be dark. Because light actually travels much worse in water compared to sound. And it travels much worse in water compared to in air. And light is very quickly absorbed in water, and therefore not available to many species in the sea, especially in places, for example, like turbid coastal waters, but also in clear waters. Around 50% of the visible light, is absorbed within the first 50 meters of the water column. That means that only very little light reaches the deep sea and the so-called twilight zone. This means that organisms living there had to develop own strategies to survive. For example, they can be bioluminescent, or they developed huge eyes to capture the little bit of light that is potentially left there. But many species in the sea also rely on sound for many important aspects of their life. For example, finding their prey, communicating with their peers, or finding potential mating buddies. Organisms can not only hear sound, they can also produce sound. And actually, many of the loudest animals on the planet live in the sea. Whales are known to be noisy, and the most or the loudest amongst them is the sperm whale. It can make sounds up to 230 decibels, which is much louder than, for example, a jet plane engine at the start, which is around 140, 150 decibels. But you don't have to be very large to be noisy. These little shrimps, for example, known as pistol shrimps, they produce cavitation bubbles with their big claw that then explode and stun their prey. And just a little fun fact, one of the recently discovered pistol shrimp species has a pink claw making the loud sounds. So researchers actually do have a sense of humor, so they called this species after Pink Floyd. Rumors has it that this was also exploited by navies that used soft bottom beds inhabited by pistol shrimp colonies to hide their ships, to camouflage their sound. I'm not sure if this is absolutely true, but I read it in the internet. What I do know is true is that we researchers can use sound to monitor the ocean, to listen for the animals living there. We can, for example, purely by listening to it, see whether a coral reef is healthy or not. And there are many different animals making sounds on a coral reef. Not only the pistol shrimps, but also many fish species do talk. They do what we call vocalize. But it's not only fish species associated to coral reefs, it's also fish species living here, such as the Atlantic cod, which is made by Dali, so it's not exactly a cod, but it could be a cod. And we did put out hydrophones in the Trondheimsfjord in an attempt to listen to fish. because it's known that Atlantic cod does talk, especially when they're looking for mates. So communicating for mating. And this is how it sounds. I find this incredibly cute, but I'm a biologist. I have to say that this is not our recording, unfortunately, because I got it from the homepage called fishsounds.net, and you can see the original reference there. Because we heard so far mostly anthropogenic sounds, what you can see here. This is probably a little bit artistic pictures of the fast passenger ferry coming and leaving the harbor just in front of our research institute. And this is how an average day in the Trondheimsfjord looks like, or probably I should say sounds like. These are all little recordings that I put together. They're 30-minute recordings, so every one of these bricks is a 30-minute audio file that I put together into a collage. And on the y-axis, you can see frequency, like changes in frequency with high frequencies on top and low frequencies here on the bottom. And white means noisy, black means relatively calm. And I started this recording around 12 o'clock at night, and already at 12:15, the first boat is coming. That's a pretty early wake-up call, and this is how it sounds. Yeah, that's the sound of Trondheimsfjord. I also have to say that when fish talk, they hear and talk in relatively low frequencies. That means in these areas which are the most noisy, mostly due to ship traffic. So there is not so much time on a day available for fish flirt. There are some time slots, though. But I also have to mention that we did these recordings just outside Munkholmen, which is probably one of the most busy areas in Trondheimsfjord, as we know very well.
Yes, we study this fjord with a big yellow buoy that you might see outside in the Trondheimsfjord. And it's equipped with a bunch of sensors and equipment so that we can learn more about the fjord. And so from this picture, from the surface, it looks quite quiet and calm and like not much is happening under there. But based on what we just heard, we know that there's a lot of ship sound at least happening under there constantly. And so we wonder, is there really any even marine species hanging out there? And that's where we use sound to see underwater. So we have these echo sounder equipments, which is like fish finders or ekolod for the Norwegians that you'd find on your fishing boats. And they send out a pulse of sound so that compresses and stretches the water. And as it travels through the water, it'll reflect off anything that has a density that's different than water. So that'll be fish and zooplankton, for example, the food of the fish. And it gives us these beautiful images that is, to me, art, where things that reflect the sound really strongly, so strong boundaries like the bottom at 70 meters there, will come out as a bright yellow, and schools of zooplankton, like that swooping swoosh across this canvas, will come out as this more green color. So here we see the daily commute of the zooplankton, which starts at about 4 p.m. when you're wrapping up your day. They start their way towards the surface so that they can get there when it's dark and when the sun sets around 8 p.m. So they're ready to feed in the dark when they have more chance of surviving and less chance of being preyed upon by fish. And then before you even wake up, at about 4 a.m., they start thinking that the sun's going to start to rise again. They can start feeling it, seeing it, and so they dive back down to go hide in the deep, darker depths to hide away from their prey, and they're kind of tucking away by 8 a.m. when you're back in the office. So we get all this information just by sending little pings in the water. So that's pretty powerful. And we can even use it to see in the darkest of areas. So in the polar night in the Arctic and Svalbard that we've talked about quite a bit, there's 4 months of complete darkness, basically. And here we can use sound to understand the behavior of fish and zooplankton as they react from light or sound or different stressors that we're causing them. And here on the left, there's that orange cylinder. That's the echo sounder, and it's the surface that kind of warps back and forth to make the sound pings. So this is why we use sound to study the underwater world, because we can see far, we can listen very far, and we can understand a bit better how we're impacting and hopefully what we can do to help the marine environment. Thank you very much for listening.
Hello everyone, my name is Ute and I work with digital twins of the ocean, very important, in the EUs project. I always start my talks with this slide and I always start by saying the ocean is beautiful, so why on earth do we need a digital representation or even a digital twin for it? That's an important question. And now I'm lost. No, I always start this. And this is important because we all live with the ocean. You have heard now what we do with the ocean, but 10% of all people in the world will never see the ocean. And you have also heard that we often only get to see what's on the surface, not see what's below it, what's beneath it. And now I am presenting to you how we can communicate digital twins of the ocean. And why I work with digital twins of the ocean, because I want to communicate what is going on in the ocean and how we can use this technology to live with this ocean more sustainably. Digital twins of the ocean go far beyond just ocean models, just ocean data, and I don't want to diminish this, but digital twins of the ocean bring this all together, and they include very much this decision making, the human in the loop. So somebody has to do something with the twins, otherwise I wouldn't want to make them. And I actually use this yellow buoy in the Trondheim Fjord to learn, and I use the data to learn how to make digital twins. In this talk, I will talk to you about the work that my colleagues or my project partners in the EUs project have done. So it's really not just my work, or not at all my work, but work that other people have done. So I was so lucky to have spent 1 year in Germany at Fraunhofer, and I was living in Warnemünde. And what they found in front of the coast of Warnemünde is this tugboat. And this tugboat is now lying there. It was observed by divers. And of course, it's degrading. It's in salt water. So it's degrading, and now in 2022, people started, we kind of have to preserve it, and it's difficult. Probably when you want to pick it up, it will discontinue or it will break. So they had this initiative to digitalize it. So this is now another view. This is called augmented reality. So in addition to all these pictures that they took and stitched together, they put this now in a gaming environment and added augmented reality. So now you can have an idea how this tugboat might have looked like. And it's one way of preserving this. They have also found some artifacts on this boat, and now you can see how you can use your gaming environment. Now you see these handles that these gaming people know how to work with. And now you can even pick up things and you can inspect them and see what they look like. And you have the torch in the one hand and you can pick it up and now see how nicely it falls to the bottom when it's released. So like, oh, it's going down to the seafloor. So they also found a radio, so you can inspect this radio. And there are several things that they found on this tugboat. And this is now their way of preserving it. This is visible at a museum. You can also go on a website and you can work with these models and rotate them and work with this. So this is another way of augmented reality. This is another view. Now you can have a look at this tugboat, how it might really have looked like. But at the same time, you can use your torch and see how it really looks like now. So you have this comparison between these two versions of this tugboat. So this is very exciting, and it's a very exciting use of gaming technology to bring things from the ocean to people. We would have never seen this if these people hadn't done it the way they have made it now. And now it's accessible to very many people and to us here. And I think by now we are all very excited what is inside this boat and what happens, and if there happens something when we click on these little eyes that are there, and of course they are. So these are information pieces where you can click on all these eyes and they give you information about the area you are in. So this is in German now, but it says there has been there was this thing that you could pass food and items through between the people in the kitchen and the other ones. But all these things that you see in the water, these have been decided or invented by the person who has programmed this. So these are not real. They might look like they looked on this on this picture, but they are not reality. So how great would it be if we could have this information from a digital twin of this ocean area? So it was real data. We could see how this looks like. So this is an example from my project partners from Breda University who try to visualize the particles that we have, because we have a particle camera on the yellow buoy who is measuring particles in the ocean. And we are very much concerned about, are these good particles that belong there? So we heard from Muriel, there's zooplankton wandering around, commuting. That's okay, but there's also microplastic, there is oil. So we would like to know where they go, so we use Ocean Model to see that. This is a way of modeling or visualizing these particles, but we still haven't seen anything yet about the ocean itself. So this is another example. This is a collaboration from Breda University and Fraunhofer. This is now a visualization of a wind farm, and this wind farm is there. So the geometry of these wind turbines, where they are placed in the ocean, how much wave there are, how much wind there is right now, how much visibility you have. This is all coming from the digital twin. So this is real data. It's coming in via an API, which means it's an interface, a machine-to-machine interface, and it's fed by this. So in usual gaming, you can go through this. Now you can inspect these wind turbines. You can tell these procedural ocean how many wind turbines there are, how they should look like. There are also other wind parks with other wind turbines. Now we take this away because we want to simulate a what-if scenario. And this is the reason why we are doing these digital twins. We want to understand, are things possible, or what happens if we are doing things in the ocean? So this is now an installation procedure of this kind of wind turbine. We are still just in a gaming environment. So this is now simulating the installation of this wind turbine, and we can use this digital twin and this visualization to study, is this operation actually possible or is it not? So currently we have good weather, no waves, almost no wind, so this is really cool. Yes, it's very good. And now we are manually changing the weather. So now we can say, make it a bit worse, for example, and how the same situation would look, the same scenario would like in bad weather. So now the visibility is worse, and soon it will start raining a lot. And then this operation might be harder. I want to transfer this kind of procedural ocean to aquaculture. Aquaculture is still an industry in Norway where we have a lot of death, a lot of accidents, things that we don't want to happen. This is another example I made that yesterday. So it was the real weather in a German wind park yesterday that came into this digital twin representation of this. And of course I didn't like this, so I changed now the weather the other way around, took away the clouds, and made the weather better. So this is what you can do in gaming environments, but I think it's really cool that you can feed these environments from real data to inspect and to see how it might look like. So now the weather's nice again. Another thing I have worked a lot of previously with is oil spills. And for oil spills, it's immensely important not only to know where the oil is, but for the responders, it's immensely important how the oil looks like, because that tells you something, what kind of oil it is and how much oil there is. So this is currently not too realistic because they haven't worked together with us yet, but we can already see that it is possible to visualize oil on the sea surface in different weather conditions to give people and responders an idea about how does it look like, what is the situation like that I'm going to. So this is what oil looks like when it's much thinner and very much more in the water column than on the sea surface. And again, I can play with the weather or with the waves. That is very important also for oil spill contingency response. And I can use this to communicate the situation out there, maybe much better than I can, or than I could have done before. So this is kind of these gaming environments. Now we come to the next thing. I'm kind of obsessed with metahumans. I'm not sure if you heard about metahumans. I find them really, really cool. And I think it's the mathematician in me who tries to grasp how something as complex as the face can be realized in these metahumans. So metahumans is something that the gaming industry has invented because they need humans in their games. And they have a set of humans that you can choose from. And then you can use these humans that you have to create your own metahuman. And I always want to create myself. So this is me, or it's supposed to be me. It's not yet me. So people are shaking their heads. But I'm really trying to do me. So you can either mix yourself from several humans that are already there, or you can go through this menu and then really try and to correct the different forms of your face to make it look like you. And I find that really cool because this metahuman is already animated, so it can do a lot of things. It has all these face movements, all these things are already there. And why I want a metahuman? Yes, I want this to include into my digital twin. So how cool would it be if you could ask me about the ocean? Or another metahuman, of course. But how nice would it be? A person you can trust can tell you something about the ocean within a digital twin. For example, here for our Trondheim Fjord, explain you what the buoy is for and why we're doing this, what happens with sound in the ocean. Wouldn't that be amazing? And it is actually possible to make this better. I learned that yesterday, so I will need a new computer to do this, but it includes photogrammetry. So this is a real good example. So my project partner in Ditto Digital Twins of the Ocean, is the UN Global Decade Program for digital twins. They have used that for the Xiamen summit last year. Xiamen is a town that's very close to Taiwan. And they made, similarly, like we are operating here in the Trondheim Fjord, they made a digital twin of Xiamen Bay. And they trained a large language model to be able to answer questions about the area there. And they have this little meta-human down there, and you could ask this meta-human questions about this ocean area based on a large language model. Or we do it like my project partner Wavek, and let people explain meta-humans, of course.
My name is Wavika, and I am here to showcase the STOMP application, developed by WaveEC within the Iliad EU project.
Note her jacket.
As part of the digital twin of the ocean, it consists of a tool for the optimization of short-term operation and maintenance planning of offshore wind farms. These activities contribute up 25% of the total levelized cost of energy of offshore production. It is thus crucial to minimize operational costs.
So we can have a digital human explaining digital solutions to us. So the last example that I want to give is from Varna Bay. Varna Bay is a port in Bulgaria where they have huge challenges with safe sailing into that harbor. It's often very low visibility, and there are tricky wind conditions in the sectors of this harbor. So what they did is they made an application using these Google glasses so that actually the captains can sail in the dark or while being blind. So now you see this tested in real live conditions. So you see the buoy in the channel, and you see the virtual reality version of that. So this is now really used, and it's then enhanced also by more photogrammetry to make the overall picture complete. And this can easily be transferred to each port that we say that has challenges when sailing. For example, also to the Trondheim Fjord, we know often that the boats cannot come to the harbor here because of the rough conditions, and then they have to go to Ila. And I would like to close with a quote from Leonard Bernstein: "The work of art does not answer questions, it provokes them. Its essential meaning is in the tension between contradictory answers." I find that very often that it's hard to communicate, even to the next generation, our kids, how important it is that we understand the ocean and we work with the ocean very sustainably. So I think using art to have as many access points to the ocean as we can have, as many as we want, as many as we need, is very crucial. And also I use Delhi for my art, and by this I would like to thank you.
So just Board had to go. So just on behalf of him, I wanted to say thank you very much for coming. Thank you to all the people who are online. These recordings have been, or these talks have been recorded, and they will be available and distributed in the future if you wanted to listen to them again. Thank you very much as well to all our speakers, to Christian, to Julia, to Muriel, who's not here anymore, but she was sitting there, to Ute. I really, really appreciate your time and your energy and getting involved with this project. So thank you very much, and thank you also to our production company.